Proper version. What does that mean for custody? My voice was hoarse from crying, but my hands were steady now. The numbness was fading, replaced by something stronger, determination. In cases like this, Attorney Chin explained, where one parent's infidelity directly affects their judgment regarding the child's welfare, the court typically favors the non-cheating spouse. The fact that he ignored your calls while engaged in the affair, potentially putting your daughter at risk, is especially concerning to judges. I nodded, jotting down notes through blurred vision. And what about the house? Given that the adultery occurred in the marital home, she replied, you have strong grounds to claim it entirely. Most judges won't force a betrayed spouse to sell the home where the affair took place. For the next hour, we discussed assets, timelines, and legal strategy. It all felt surreal, dismantling an 8-year marriage into cold legal terms, reducing love and betrayal to property divisions and custody schedules. As I gathered my things to leave, Attorney Chin hesitated. Mrs. Johnson, I have to ask, are you sure reconciliation isn't possible? Many couples recover from infidelity. I thought of Austin telling me he loved Denise. I thought of 6 months of lies, family dinners where they both smiled at me as if nothing was wrong. I thought of my sister's hands tangled in my husband's hair. It's not possible, I said firmly. I want him served tomorrow. And your sister? She asked quietly. Will she be a factor going forward? She's dead to me. Austin was served the next day, at his office, just as I requested, so all his coworkers would see. Petty. Maybe. But I was past caring about his reputation. He stormed into the house that evening like a hurricane. Kesha, what the hell is this? Adultery. Abandonment of parental duties. Are you trying to destroy my life? I was feeding Zora dinner, keeping my voice calm for her sake. I'm documenting the truth. Everything in those papers is accurate. You can't keep Zora from me. I'm her father. A father who ignored his wife's calls while his daughter needed medicine because he was too busy having an affair, I said, wiping Zora's face gently. A father who brought his mistress into her home. I told you, it's not like that with Denise. Don't. I raised a hand. Don't say her name in front of our daughter. His face turned red with anger. This is insane. People make mistakes, Kesha. We can fix this. You didn't make a mistake, Austin, I said coldly. You made a choice. Every day for 6 months, you chose to betray me. Every dinner, every late night, every time you kissed me after kissing her, that wasn't a mistake. Those were choices. Mama. Zara looked between us, her big eyes full of worry. Why is Daddy loud? I lifted her from her high chair and held her close. Daddy's just upset, baby. Let's go read stories. As I carried her upstairs, Austin shouted, this isn't over, Kesha. I'm not letting you take my daughter away. But the truth was, I wasn't taking her away. He'd already made that choice himself. I was just making it official. The hardest part wasn't losing Austin. I was done with him. The hardest part was watching our families fall apart. My mother cried for 3 days straight after I told her about Denise. My father, gentle, patient, loving, punched a hole in his garage wall. That girl, my mother kept sobbing. I raised her better than this. I thought I raised her better than this. My brothers were divided. Kevin wanted to beat Austin senseless and cut Denise off forever. Jerome, ever the peacemaker, preached forgiveness. Families make mistakes, he said. Zara still needs her aunt. She's not Zara's aunt anymore, I snapped during one heated call. She's the woman who helped destroy Zara's family. Kesha, you're being dramatic. Am I? I laughed bitterly. She was having sex with my husband in my bed while my 3-year-old slept upstairs. If that's drama, then I guess it's exactly what this situation calls for. The worst part was Denise's persistence. Text. Calls. Even showing up at my workplace. She mailed a 5-page letter that I threw away unopened. She even had my mother call, begging me to listen to her side. Adonis stood frozen in the dimly lit room, her breath shallow as the last words of Efoma echoed in her mind. When Kola returns tonight, the real secret will begin to unfold. The air felt heavier now, thick with anticipation and dread. Every sound in the old house, the creak of wood, the faint whisper of the evening breeze, seemed amplified, alive, as though the house itself was aware of the storm about to come. Her eyes drifted once more to the coffin. The plantain chips still lay there, perfectly aligned, as if waiting for someone, or something, to claim them. She took a cautious step closer, her mind buzzing with fear and curiosity. Was this really just about Kola's strange rituals? Or was it something darker, something that reached beyond human understanding? The faint hum that filled the room earlier returned, stronger now, vibrating in the walls and the floor beneath her feet. The air shimmered again near the hidden doorway, and for a fleeting second, Adonis thought she saw movement, a flicker of light or a shadow, she couldn't tell which. She rubbed her eyes, but the image had already vanished, leaving her even more unsettled. She tried to calm herself, reminding her heart to beat normally, but every thought of Kola only made it worse. What kind of man hides coffins and secret rituals in his home? What has he been doing all these nights? The more she thought, the more fragmented her memories became. Kola whispering to himself at midnight, the smell of burning herbs from the basement, the way he sometimes stared into space like he was listening to someone unseen. Adonis' pulse quickened. Maybe Efoma was right, this was only the beginning. She needed to prepare herself before Kola returned. She looked around the room again, trying to find clues. On a small wooden table near the coffin, she noticed something she hadn't seen before, a black journal with gold-edged pages. It was half hidden beneath a folded piece of cloth. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. The leather felt warm against her skin, as if it had absorbed the energy of every secret written inside. She hesitated only for a moment before opening it. The first page was filled with neat, looping handwriting, Kola's handwriting. The words were strange, part English, part an ancient dialect she didn't recognize. Her eyes moved quickly across the lines, picking out only fragments that made sense. The offering must be renewed. The bridge between words grows weaker. Only through the chips can the balance be kept. Adonis' breath caught in her throat. The plantain chips, an offering. A ritual. None of it made sense. She turned another page, and her stomach twisted. There, taped carefully to the paper, was a photograph of Kola standing beside the same coffin. But behind him, barely visible, was a faint, ghostly outline of a figure, tall, luminous, and watching him with burning eyes. Her hands shook violently, and the journal slipped from her fingers, falling open on the floor. A small folded note fell out from between the pages. Adonis bent down and picked it up. The handwriting was rushed this time, messy and uneven, as if Kola had written it in panic. If you are reading this, it means you have seen the coffin. Don't touch the chips. Don't let the watcher know you are aware. They are always listening. Adonis' heart pounded so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. They? Who are they? She looked toward the doorway, half expecting Efoma to reappear. But the house was silent again, eerily silent. Then, a faint sound drifted from somewhere below, the soft creak of the front door opening. Someone was home. Adonis' entire body went rigid. She could feel the presence before she even heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing through the hallway. Kola had returned. Her mind raced. Should she confront him? Should she hide the journal? Or pretend she had seen nothing? Panic clawed at her throat, but her curiosity still burned fiercely inside her. She carefully slid the journal beneath a nearby rug and stepped back, trying to steady her breathing. The footsteps grew louder. The doorknob turned, and Kola stepped into the room. His expression was calm, too calm. But his eyes flicked immediately to the coffin. Then to Adoni. And for the briefest moment, she thought she saw something unnatural in his gaze, something ancient and knowing. "Adoni," he said softly, his voice smooth but cold, "you shouldn't be here." Her heart leaped to her throat. "Kola, what is this? Why are the chips inside the coffin? What are you hiding from me?" He smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth twitching as though he was amused, or perhaps relieved. "You've seen more than I intended," he said, stepping closer. "But maybe it's time you understood why." Adoni backed away, her pulse racing. "Understood what? What's happening here, Kola? Who is Efoma? And what are these rituals you've been performing?" Kola's eyes darkened. The air around him seemed to shift, the dim light flickering as though something unseen had stirred. "Efoma came to you?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Adoni whispered. "She said there are forces you don't control." "What does that mean?" Kola's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he turned his gaze toward the coffin. "It means," he said finally, "that the balance is breaking, and you, Adoni, have already become part of it." Adoni froze at Kola's words. "You've already become part of it." The sentence echoed in her mind like a curse. The room felt smaller now, as though the walls were closing in around her. A cold breeze passed through the space, rustling the cloth draped over the coffin and making the candlelight dance across Kola's face. She wanted to speak, to demand an explanation, but her lips refused to move. All she could do was stare at him, the man she thought she knew, the man who had shared her laughter, her meals, her bed. Yet, in that moment, she realized how little she truly understood him. Kola stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have opened the coffin," he said quietly, almost regretfully. "It wasn't meant for you." Adoni found her voice. "Then who was it meant for, Kola? What are you hiding? What are you doing with those chips?" He sighed and looked down, his fingers brushing against the coffin lid. "They are not just chips," he murmured. "They are offerings, tokens that keep the watchers at bay. Every night, they come closer. Every night, I give them something simple, something ordinary, to remind them of life. To keep them from crossing over." Adoni blinked, her mind spinning. "Watchers? You mean spirits?" Kola's eyes lifted to hers, glinting with a strange light. "Not spirits. Not ghosts. Something older. Something that existed long before men learned to speak. They live in the silence between breaths, in the shadows between moments. And once they find you, they never truly leave." A chill ran down Adoni's spine. "You're saying, these watchers are real?" Kola nodded slowly. "I didn't believe it at first either. But when I bought this house, I started hearing things, whispers, footsteps, the sound of something breathing behind me. I tried to ignore it, but one night, Efoma came to me. She told me that this house stands on the boundary between our world and theirs." Adoni's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "Efoma," she said, "she's been watching over this house for a long time." Kola gave a short, humorless laugh. "Watching over it, yes, but not for us. She's one of them, Adoni. A messenger. She keeps the balance, makes sure the watchers don't cross over. But they are growing stronger. The old rituals aren't enough anymore." Adoni's stomach twisted. "So that's what the chips are for? You feed them to things that live in the shadows?" Kola's gaze turned distant, haunted. "They don't eat them. They remember them. The smell, the taste, the essence of something living, it holds them back. It reminds them they are not part of this world. But the ritual must be done carefully, and tonight is the night of renewal." He paused, his eyes flicking toward the window. Outside, the last sliver of sunlight had vanished, replaced by an unnaturally deep darkness. If the offering isn't made, he continued softly, the watchers will come through. And if they find you? He stopped, as if afraid to finish the sentence. Adoni took a shaky step back. Then teach me, she said suddenly, her voice trembling but determined. Teach me how to help you. I've seen too much already. I can't pretend none of this is real. Kola looked at her with a mixture of sorrow and admiration. You're brave, Adoni. But bravery won't protect you tonight. He opened the coffin completely, revealing the perfectly arranged chips once more. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial filled with shimmering liquid, silver, almost alive. He held it up, and the liquid seemed to pulse with light. This is what binds the offering, he explained. It carries a memory, the memory of love, warmth, and connection. Without it, the watchers would see only emptiness. Adoni swallowed hard. And where did you get it? Kola hesitated. It's drawn from the living. From the bond between two souls who truly trust each other. His voice dropped lower. That's why it worked for so long, Adoni. Because it was made from us. Her breath caught. From us. He nodded. Every time we shared a meal, every laugh, every touch, it created energy strong enough to hold them back. But lately, the watchers have been growing restless. Something's changed. Adoni's pulse quickened. What changed, Kola? Before he could answer, the lights flickered violently. A low rumble shook the floor, and the coffin lid slammed shut with a deafening bang. The air turned icy, and a whisper slid through the room, soft at first, then louder, overlapping voices that didn't sound human. Kola grabbed Adoni's arm. They're here. The shadows on the walls began to stretch, twisting into long, thin shapes that moved even when the candles were still. Adoni's heart pounded as she clung to Kola's sleeve. What do we do? Stay close to me, he said urgently, pulling her toward the coffin. If they sense fear, they'll feed on it. The voices grew louder, a chorus of murmurs in a language she couldn't understand. The shadows crawled toward them, slow and deliberate, reaching out with hands that weren't quite hands. Then, the front door burst open. Efoma stood there, her white eyes glowing like stars. Kola, she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. You've waited too long. The offering must be completed now. Kola turned, desperation flashing across his face. Help me, Efoma. She saw everything, I couldn't stop her. Efoma stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Then she must join the ritual. It's the only way to seal the breach. Adoni's blood turned cold. Join the ritual. What does that mean? Efoma's gaze locked onto her. It means, my dear, that you are no longer just a witness. You are the key. Adoni stumbled back, her pulse hammering in her ears. The key, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the flickering candles and the whispers of the shadows closing in. Efoma's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained otherworldly. The veil between words is tearing because of you, child, she said. Your curiosity awakened something that was meant to remain asleep. Kola's grip on Adoni's arm tightened. No, he said sharply, shaking his head. It's not her fault. I should have sealed the coffin before she entered. Efoma turned her gaze on him, her tone cutting like a blade. You were warned, Kola. The watchers sense emotion, love, guilt, fear. You filled this house with all three. Now, they hunger. The air trembled as a deep, guttural sound rose from the floorboards, a rumble that felt alive. The shadows on the walls thickened, riding like smoke that refused to disperse. Adoni could feel them watching her, hundreds of unseen eyes, cold and endless. I don't understand, she said, clutching her chest. What do they want from me? Efoma stepped closer, her white gown whispering across the floor. Balance, she said simply. When two souls share a bond strong enough to create light, that light must be returned when disturbed. You opened the coffin, you disrupted the seal. The watchers demand repayment. Adoni stared at Kola, disbelief and terror warring inside her. Repayment? What kind of repayment? Efoma's eyes glimmered faintly. A soul. Kola's face went pale. No, he said, shaking his head furiously. Take mine. I started this. I'll give it willingly. But Efoma only sighed. It doesn't work that way. The bond must be balanced. One gives, one remains. If both are taken, the seal collapses completely, and the watchers consume everything. Adoni felt the world tilt beneath her feet. You're saying one of us has to die? Efoma didn't answer. Her silence was enough. The room shuddered again. A loud crack split the air, and the coffin lid burst open with a force that sent the candles flying. A gust of freezing wind swept through the house, and the shadows poured from the coffin like liquid night. They whispered in 1,000 voices, some crying, some laughing, some calling Adoni's name. Adoni, Kola said urgently, grabbing her by the shoulders. Listen to me. If they take you, they'll use your life to feed the breach. But if I go willingly, it will close. Tears blurred her vision. No, Kola, there has to be another way. He smiled sadly. There isn't. This was never supposed to touch you. You were the reason I kept fighting it, the reason I found light in this cursed house. Maybe that's why they chose you. Efoma's voice rose above the growing storm. Choose quickly. The breach widens. The shadows surged upward, swirling into a dark vortex at the center of the room. The walls trembled, and objects flew from the shelves, shattering against the floor. Adoni screamed as one of the shadows brushed against her skin. It felt like frost and fire all at once, and her knees buckled. Kola caught her before she fell. Adoni, look at me, he shouted. If you love me, let me go. That love will seal the gate. She clung to his shirt, sobbing. I can't lose you. You already did, he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. The moment you opened that door, my fate was sealed. But you can still live. Then, before she could stop him, he tore himself from her arms and stepped into the vortex. The shadows howled, shrieking like a storm of voices. Light burst from his body, blinding, golden, searing through the darkness. Adoni screamed his name as the light consumed the room. The wind died. The whispers stopped. When the brightness faded, Kola was gone. The coffin stood open and empty. The shadows were gone too, no trace of them left. The house was silent, still, almost peaceful. Adoni collapsed to her knees, sobbing into the silence. Efoma approached, her face filled with quiet sorrow. He has given you life, she said softly. The watchers will sleep for another century. Adoni looked up, her eyes burning. You could have stopped him. Efoma shook her head slowly. No, child. Only love can end what love began. She placed a cold hand on Adoni's cheek. Guard your heart, for such love can awaken them again. With that, Efoma turned and walked toward the door. When Adoni blinked, the woman was gone. She sat there for what felt like hours, her tears soaking into the floorboards. Then, slowly, she rose and looked at the coffin. Something gleamed inside, a single chip, perfectly golden, resting where Kola had stood. Adoni picked it up with trembling fingers. It was warm to the touch. She held it to her chest and whispered, I never forget you. And as she walked out of the hidden room, the door behind her sealed itself, vanishing once more into the wall.